Hi, this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. Tuesdays at the moment are blast from the past day, for as long as I think it's okay to do so anyway. I found another video that I did a while ago that's probably unique on YouTube again, and it's basically a direct comparison between two dendrobiums that have often been confused. And I had comments supporting that, you know, I've got one but I don't know which one it is, sort of thing. So as I had both at the time, I put them next to each other and did a direct comparison, look at the blooms and a chat about the care, especially the winter rest, to actually get those blooms. So it's quite a detailed look at Dendrobium, what most people call aggregatum, which in fact is Dendrobium lindleyi, and Dendrobium jenkinsii. So that's what the video is all about, the blast from the past. Now the two plants in question were lost. They needed remounting, and in this environment they just never took. So I lost both of them. They have since been replaced. So I do have lindleyi on the left there and a little jenkinsii on the right. The lindleyi is in fact larger than the one I had in those days, but the jenkinsii has got a lot of work to do. Both of these were given to me by Lynn, as she couldn't get them to bloom. I think the jenkinsii might have been a bit young to bloom, who knows. But anyway, they're with me now. They've done some growing this season. They're currently resting, and we will see if we get any blooms. I haven't got the light that I used to have in the old place, so it's going to be more troublesome to get these to bloom really well. But hopefully we'll get some blooms on the lindleyi, and I doubt it, but possibly on the jenkinsii. Anyway, so that's what this video is all about, and I'll leave you to watch it, and I hope you enjoy it, and I'll see you next time. Hi, this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. This is a requested video, and although that's for one person, it may be useful for others. There's always been a bit of confusion between Dendrobium jenkinsii and Dendrobium lindleyi. Not for me, because I've got both, or I have now. The lindleyi is a relatively new acquisition. But I've had the jenkinsii many years. You don't very often see one as large as that, and I may have to split that because it's going over the edges of what is a very large mount already. Next year it's either going to go around the back of the mount or it's going to be hanging in the air, which won't do it a lot of good. So I may well have to split that. If I did, I would select pieces and start a new mount of a good size, because for me it grows really well. But the jenkinsii is definitely coming to the edge of the mount, and next year it will be starting to go around the sides. And I've already had a problem with getting the blooming on this didn't go very well this spring because of where I kept it, and the problem is this curvature here. So when you're trying to put a plant in bright light on a shelf where the light comes in from a slight angle, what happened was this part of the plant got much brighter light than this part of the plant. So this part of the plant didn't bloom very well. It had far less blooms in this area, and they were later. So it didn't get a mass blooming because of the way the light hit it. I'll be wary of that this time. But it's difficult to get to, because of the curve on that mount, it's difficult now to get this plant to face bright light. if you see what I mean, because the two edges curve away from the light and are slightly shaded by the centre sections, not so much that end. But if you could imagine if the light was hitting the plant like that, which is what it was, this area around here wasn't getting much, and this was getting it all. And I mean, there's quite a lot of dieback in the centre of this bit, so you're not going to get many blooms in this area anyway. So this sort of becomes like a separate plant naturally, possibly two. So there may be some pieces of that next year sometime. I'm not doing it now. I'd always do it when new growths were forming, which is either alongside or after blooming. So the main reason for the video is the difference between the two. They're both winter resters, and when you put them side by side, the difference is blatantly obvious. Jenkinsii is a much, much smaller dendrobium than the lindleyi. That's the blatantly obvious difference. But if you only had one of them, and for instance, if you had a very young lindleyi where the bulbs were this size, I suppose you could get in a bit of a muddle. But the main difference for me is as the bulbs age, they take on a much darker hue, often with tinges of purple. And if you look at the way jenkinsii grows, the canes try to lie flat. You see how they all try to lie flat? They're not pointing towards us, they're trying to lie flat. Whereas the lindleyi is much more prone to growing away from whatever it's attached to, and is quite happy to point away. And the bulbs are much, much larger. And certainly on my plant at the moment, occasionally you might get two leaves out the top. I've never seen that before. Anyway, so that's the main differences. Obviously when they bloom, the differences are even more obvious, because the blooms on jenkinsii, you don't get many blooms per spike, and the spikes are not very long. So the blooms tend to be quite tight to the plant, you know, so they sort of cover the plant. Whereas on lindleyi, they are pendulous, and you get a lot more blooms. They are slightly larger as well. They do have a very distinct difference in the shape, but without putting the two blooms next to each other, it's difficult to explain. But there's an outline shape difference between the two that really differentiates. Now, we've had some fun and games with the names on these two over the years as well. This is usually sold as, and has been called, Dendrobium aggregatum for so long it's become the name. Its true name, if you want to go down that road, is Dendrobium lindleyi, because Mr. Lindley was the guy who first described it, along with many, many, many other orchids. That name will turn up all over the place, yeah. As opposed to Mr. Jenkins, probably only found that one or described that one. It's not so matter of who found it, it's who first describes it. And this is where you get some of the problems. It goes back far enough that when some of these plants were first described, they were described with, there's no cameras or anything in those days. You know, you didn't pop out and do a quick video of it hanging off the tree with the blooms swaying in the wind. You had to draw it. So they were relying on botanical drawings and their accuracy. And where I was going on about the I can never say that word. The other one, DeSoto annum, that's been incorrectly named, they were going from a black and white drawing. No colour had been added. So you can see how the confusion lies. And you're looking at a dried plant, you know, a preserved plant that's effectively dead. All you've got is the shape, it's been preserved. So you've got a black and white drawing and a preserved plant. That's what you're left with. And if a plant became extinct 100 years ago, that's all you've got. So you can see how things can go wrong in the old naming front. Anyway, aggregatum and lindleyi are classed in the RHS records as synonymous. So you can call it either. I just prefer lindleyi because it makes more sense to me, as aggregatum makes no sense at all. But that's what most people would call it. It's the same plant, effectively. Jenkinsii, once upon a time, was called lindleyi variety jenkinsii, but it's definitely its own individual species. These are two separate species. They're related, but they're not a variety of one or the other. Throw that idea away straight away. Okay, so that's really the obvious difference is that jenkinsii is much, much smaller. The canes tend to try and lie flat when they can. Yeah, so they'll come out and curl over like this, you see, whereas lindleyi tends to be more, trying to come away and is much, much larger. So that's the real differences. The growth habit effectively is the same. It might not look it, but it is. The new growths come out away from the origins of the plant. So the origins of this plant are here. These are the little seedling bulbs, and it's grown away from them. And the latest growths are this one here, that big one there, this one with 2 leaves, this one here, and another one down the bottom. So they've grown away yet again. So you've got your first sort of set. And sometimes they're in a circle, but usually it's a semicircle. They grow away, then the next lot grow away. So it gradually gets bigger and bigger, but you can always see that origin, that little cluster. Now this one, you can't see that so much because this has already been taken off a mount. All the old dead pieces like this taken off to tidy it up. And then it was remounted to look pretty with all the pieces tight together. Well, it's gone again. It's grown away again, leaving the old dead bits behind. So it's going to need another tidy up. This one will probably be able to stay on its mount another couple of years. Again, it's going to get to the edge. If you look at where the new growths are now, the next set of new growths will be on the edge virtually. There's more room over this side, but we only had one new growth come in this direction. So we'll see, but I suspect I can get at least another year out of that. This one I'm not so sure. I think, come the spring when the new growths start, that one's going to have a seeing to. Which will mean trying to take it all off, save as many roots as possible, get rid of all these dead bits, all these dieback bits. That reduces the strength of the plant, but only for a short time. Unless you're talking about a tiny little plant, in which case you need to go careful. You need to keep every bulb you've got. Yeah? So if you only had, well, there's a classic example there. If you only had that piece there, yeah, then these bulbs need to stay. Yeah? As part of the strength of the plant. Yeah? However, this one is much bigger, so you could probably get away with taking some of these back ones off. Yeah? So it's if you've only got a small plant, then don't reduce it. Let it grow on first. And, they've got all this growth over here. See, there's a dieback section there as well. Yeah. But then it's pushed on out here. And again, it's virtually on the edge of the mount, near the top of the mount, at the top of the mount, at the top, hanging over the edge. So we're going to have to do something with that. That's a must. So anyway, those are the two. This one I've had quite a short time, this one I've had a very long time. If you think about it, over half of this plant was discarded when I put the pieces on this mount. That's how much I took off. And as I said, it's done it again. For me, this grows quite vigorously. But it will slow down unless it gets a good place to grow. So I've got to keep my eye on it. Yeah. So anyway, they're both winter resters, technically speaking. They will bloom much better the better the rest you can give them. They don't need to freeze their whatnots off, but they do like their night temperatures in the winter to cool down considerably more than they were in the growing season. But don't do it in one sudden move. Don't take it from your hot steamy greenhouse and think, right, it's November the 30 whatever, some magic date on the calendar, and take it into the coldest room in the house in one go. That's not how the weather works. So you just, the nights should be cooler and the days should be brighter. That's really what a winter rest consists of. Your plants, the winter resting plants, won't be growing in the winter. They won't be doing anything. So for me, it's pretty obvious they don't need feed because they're not growing. There is no growth, zero. They've ceased to grow. So no feed. And as little water as you can get away with without everything shriveling, which on a plant that looks already shriveled to start with is quite difficult to judge. But if you start seeing your leaves yellowing and falling off, in great numbers, then it's probably dying. So, you know, go steady. But these are naturally shriveled anyway. That's what they look like. So it's difficult to judge these. This one's easier on the grounds that the new growths, so get that one, are plump, yeah? Whereas the older ones look a little more ribbed. And that's about as much as you should ever let them go. So, you know, if your new one looks like that, and then it's starting to look like this, dribble of water. That's what the rest consists of. A dribble of water at the point, you know, as long as you think you can get away with it. And then at some point you will either see both or either or. You'll see the spikes starting to grow, and it's traditional on this plant every year we play spot the spikes. It's difficult on camera, but with my eye, when the spikes start on here, I can look at the plant and perhaps count 20 spikes. And we get in with the camera as close as we can, and we look, and I say, well, can you see them? And most people say, no, there's no spikes there. There is. They're just tiny. I mean, you know, that's a mature one that's died back. When they first start, they are tiny. So we play that game every year. It's not so easy to play it on this one because the spikes get going quicker and they're thicker and chunkier, much thicker and chunkier, and pendulous. So they're going to grow away from the plant quite quickly. Whereas these, you know, this is about as long as they get. Yeah, they don't get much longer than that. So the blooms are very tight to the plant. So there we go. That's those two. Chat about them. So your winter rest really is, well, any time October, November time. I mean, both of mine have already finished growing, so I'm already not soaking them when I water them now. The only reason I'm watering them now is to stop them dehydrating because it's still warm, and we've still got reasonable days. I wouldn't say they're long days anymore. We've got actually normal days for tropical orchids now, you know. In between that 11 and 13 hours is where they're comfortable, but the day lengths are shortening, so that, you know, they're going to get more dark than light soon, and the night temperatures are dropping. The last couple of nights my heater's actually kicked in. Now, okay, I've got it set to 18 at the moment. It's still the growing season, but we've just had a couple of chilly nights. And then you stop and think, well, actually, we are heading towards the end of September, aren't we? And today's the equinox, so it's officially autumn, either later today or tomorrow, whichever way it goes. But yeah, so, you know, get that feed reduced if you can as the growing season finishes and the days start to shorten. If you live in that sort of part of the world, get that feed down because they're not going to use it. They don't need it, and water less. I mean, you know, back in the growing season when I had new growths growing on like that, I was drowning these every time I watered them. Whereas now I just sort of trickle some over like that. That'll do. Just to keep them going, stop them dehydrating because we still get warm days. And then, you know, they'll change their position once we get into sort of November time. They will go up near the roof facing the light. So they will get the brightest light I can give them for the whole of the winter period, and until the spikes are progressed. Not as soon as I see them. Once I see those spikes pushing on, and most of them are already showing, then that light becomes irrelevant. It's not needed anymore. That doesn't mean I'll move them. I'll probably leave them where they are. But they'll be facing the light, and if they're facing the light, they're facing away from me. So the first thing I'll do is bring them round the other side of the shelf so that I can see the blooms. Because as I said, the light becomes more irrelevant. These don't need high light in the growing season. You know, once those new growths start, they're going to grow anyway. They'll grow in quite a bit of shade, really. You tend to get darker leaves and slightly larger leaves if you don't give them enough light in the growing season. It does them no harm at all. The buds are induced by the cooler nights through the winter, the lack of water, equivalent to their drier season, and the much brighter light, because in the main there are deciduous trees involved and the leaves have dropped in the winter time, so there's more light comes through. It's very simple. It's not difficult. It's just imagine a forest where there's quite a few deciduous trees, and then just think it through. You know, by the time you get to December, those leaves have fallen. You're going to get a lot more shafts of light heading down onto, you know, where the orchids are. So brighter winter. And it's the drier season. And because it's winter and it's the drier season, the nights are a bit cooler. Yeah. Some of that coolness is the practicalities. We all know hot air rises, don't we? Yeah, well, if you take the leaf cover off the trees, a lot more hot air rises than it would have done with the leaf cover there, because it's not trapped down in amongst the trees, is it? So the nights are cooler. Yeah. So there we go then. That's Dendrobium lindleyi or aggregatum. I'm happy with both on that one. And Dendrobium jenkinsii, whereas I'm not happy with any alternative names on that one. That is the species. And relatively easy. The only difficulty you should get with these is the potential for blooming to the maximum that the plant's capable of. Or are you just going to get some token blooms because the rest wasn't quite as good as perhaps it should have been? And the brighter the light, the cooler the nights within reason, as I said, without freezing their whatnots off. We don't want them sat up on the shelf with a hat, scarf and gloves on. Not that cold, just quite a bit cooler at night than it has been. That's what you're looking at. So there we go. See you next time. Thanks for dropping by.